Hi there, and welcome to your 15th April 2021 edition of the Weekly Wrap with me, Verashni Pillay, and the rest of the team at Explained.co.za. In today's edition, we look at why things just may be okay despite South Africa's paused vaccine rollout that's got a lot of us really worried. We also examine the DA's plans for a new Cape Town mayor and offer a special tribute to those we lost in the past week. So, let's dive into your weekly simple news update. Our take, DA mayoral race. If you're living in the mother city, you're in for a new mayor, with the ruling DA conducting interviews at the moment for the top job. Now there are three candidates in the running. The first is current mayor Dan Plato. The second is Bonginkosi Madikizela, who is the MEC for Human Settlements in the Western Cape and the Western Cape provincial leader. Then there's MP and Deputy Chair of the Western Cape and Finance spokesperson Jordan Hill-Lewis. It's increasingly looking like the third guy, who is Jordan Hill-Lewis, will get the job. Plato has been a damp squib of a mayor and isn't popular inside or outside the party. Madikizela, on the other hand, is currently embroiled in a qualification scandal and was just suspended today for 2 weeks. He apparently lied for years about having a BCom degree, according to a Daily Maverick investigation that also found the DA does not vet its leaders' qualifications. Pretty dodgy. Now, Hill-Lewis is in with the current faction in the DA, and he's close to John Steenhuisen and Helen Zille. He was formerly Zille's chief of staff. Now, of course, John Steenhuisen is the new leader of the DA, and Helen Zille is the new chair and the former leader. If you're confused what all those two things mean, so are we all. But essentially, Zille is less operationally involved. But Hill-Lewis, if he does get selected, which he probably will be, will double down on the DA's representation problem, given that of the three, he's the only pale male candidate. The DA's race problem is already an election risk after high-profile black leaders like Musi Maimane, Hamd Mashaba, and Patricia de Lille exited and Zille made her big return. Moving on to the big story. If you've heard the latest news, you're probably worried that South Africa has paused the rollout of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. This after 6 women in the US reported blood clotting, a potentially fatal side effect. The EU and the US have also hit the brakes on J&J. For South Africans, this is yet another hope dashed. We had stopped the AstraZeneca vaccine before this over concerns about its limited effectiveness against the dominant local variant. The J&J jab was supposed to be our great hope. Are we ever going to catch a break? But we think it's going to be okay. Here's why. Firstly, 0 cases of blood clotting were reported in South Africa in our first trial. That is, the 290,000 healthcare workers who participated in the first phase of our rollout, the Sisonke trial. None of them had blood clots. Secondly, the pause is just that, a pause. Authorities are hoping it'll only be for a few days while they study the link with clotting. But many local experts think we should continue the rollout because there have been no local cases of clotting, and as one said, the 1 in a million risk is very rare. And finally, we think there's hope because with more vaccines becoming globally available, South Africa has secured enough of a third vaccine by Pfizer Biotech for 15 million South Africans. The first batch of this vaccine is expected to arrive on 3rd of May, just ahead of when we were supposed to start phase 2 of our rollout, which is meant to target vulnerable groups and the elderly. Together with the J&J vaccines for 31 people, South Africa will have enough doses to exceed its target to vaccinate 40 million of our population. Remember, if any person feels uncomfortable about the whole blood clotting issue and anything to do with vaccines, they don't have to get the vaccine. And plus, side effects are side effects. They're what happens with medication. If you check the side effects of any medication you regularly take, you'd be surprised at what you'll find. Don't get us started on birth control. It's crazy. Finally, and financially, continuing with the J&J vaccine makes the most sense. We've already made an initial payment for 31 million vaccines from J&J, and that payment is not refundable. Yeah. Now you might be wondering what the heck, but Mkhize has said officials tried to push back against this clause in their negotiations with the pharmaceutical company, but they refused. And you'll remember we were rather desperate for vaccines at the time. Mkhize said they checked with other territories which seemed to have the same clause, and they were also under the same kind of, restrictions. This is just one of many unethical practices by Big Pharma and something we really need to act against when public health is concerned. Luckily, on another note, we seem to have recovered most of our money on those AstraZeneca vaccines we were stuck with. Mkhize said this week that we sold it for what we paid for, mostly to the African Union, and that seems to have worked out. Whew. Moving on to your news briefs. We love stories about solutions, so we thought we'd share this gem from the City Press about two women pioneers in forensic science. Here's the story. In 2004, Vanessa Lynch's father was brutally murdered. The perpetrators could not be arrested because of the lack of evidence at the crime scene. Now, enter Carolyn Hancock. She's a forensic geneticist, and she heard Lynch's story on carte blanche. She reached out to Lynch, who is a former commercial lawyer, and the two set out to help the justice system through science. In 2009, they developed a postgraduate course that was the first of its kind in Africa, preparing scientists to work in labs on DNA evidence. Lynch and Hancock also spearheaded the so-called DNA Act, and in 2015, the law made it mandatory for police to collect forensic DNA profiles from convicted criminals and those arrested for serious crimes. It's a crucial development for our justice system, especially considering that many criminals are repeat offenders. Many unrelated offences have been solved thanks to the growing database. The two also answered privacy concerns, saying that the system does not collect the parts of the DNA which makes us who we are, our genes. Plus, if a person is found innocent, their DNA is removed from the database. Today, South Africa has two of the best DNA laboratories in the world. But there is much to be done still. Government departments need better collaboration with forensic laboratories, and there's a hefty testing backlog at the moment. Thankfully, more money is being funneled into funding this crucial system. Onto your news from the week, John Hlophe gets his comeuppance. It's been one of those long-running sagas. Back in 2008, Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe was accused of approaching two of South Africa's top judges, Justices Chris Jafta and Bess Nkabinde, in their constitutional court chambers. He was allegedly trying to get them to rule in favor of then ANC President Jacob Zuma in a matter linked to the arms deal. It was a shocking revelation at the time and would have violated their oaths of office. This week, Hlophe was finally found guilty of gross misconduct by a judicial conduct tribunal. The matter has taken so long to conclude because, much like Zuma, Hlophe used loads of delaying tactics. He's planning on challenging the findings, but for now, the tribunal has recommended that he face impeachment. This will require a 2/3 parliamentary majority vote, so it'll be a real test of the ANC's attitude. Remember, it is quite hard to remove a judge, as it should be, because they are meant to not be influenced. But if he gets removed, it may be an ignoble end to what should have been a great tenure for the first black judge to be permanently appointed to the Western Cape High Court, but instead whose career was plagued by this and other controversies. Speaking of South Africa's judges, there are two vacancies in our top court, the Constitutional Court. This is one of our most respected institutions, and it has repeatedly kept us as a society on track during the darkest times. So we're glad to see 5 solid candidates in the running for the job following recent interviews. The interviews themselves are part of a rigorous selection process we should be proud of. It is very difficult for the president or ruling party to influence selections of judges, unlike in the US, where nominations for their top courts are made by the president. Justices serve for life, and candidates do not have to meet any qualifications. South Africa's top justices serve for a non-renewable 12-year term, and experience and qualifications are everything. The Judicial Service Commission, which includes representatives ranging from established judges to those across the political spectrum, votes for the shortlist via secret ballot after intensive interviews. Our president makes the final decision on the names presented. Now, all that said, our favorite loudmouth EFF leader, Julius Malema, who is a member of the JSE, grabbed the opportunity to be back in the spotlight and made headlines with his politicized questions of some candidates and ad-lib attacks on the judiciary as a whole. As one columnist noted, the EFF hasn't had much space to shine during the pandemic, given that it relies on what we call the politics of spectacle. But storming out of a Zoom meeting just isn't that theatrical. But Malema's comments won't go unchallenged, given that he was there as a representative of Parliament, not the EFF. Parliament has distanced itself from his attacks on judges during the interview and has been asked by civic body CASAC to take action against Malema. Moving on, remember those first Zoom meetings when you made an effort with your appearance? Ha! It wasn't long before most of us started pitching up to meetings in our pajamas and a blazer. But these virtual platforms means that we're looking at our faces more often, and so naturally, cosmetic surgery across the globe is on the app. A plastic and reconstructive surgeon in Cape Town reported a 50% increase in appointments for various procedures, while a cosmetic surgeon in Johannesburg said that he saw a 30% increase in facial patients. And look, it's not just South Africa. The Economist reports this week that there's been a 10% increase in cosmetic surgery in the US and 20% in France, according to various national bodies. It gives a whole new meaning to keep your chin up, and why not? Back to your politics news. How do you solve a problem like Zuma? Leaked audio recordings featuring ANC top dog Jesse Duarte looking for a quote-unquote solution to Zuma's problems have got us humming that famous Sound of Music ditty. The hills of Nkandla are not alive with the sounds of music, however. Instead, they're ringing with the many court processes that Zuma has to face. Here's what you need to know. Ubaba has to foot his own legal bill for the millionth take of his case related to the arms deal corruption. Yes, that's still ongoing. This week, our second top court, the Supreme Court of Appeal, effectively confirmed a lower court's decision that the state is not liable to pay his legal fees. Zuma was hoping us taxpayers would foot yet another legal bill for him. Lol. Instead, the SCA found that it would be just inequitable for Zuma to instead pay back the money he already received from the state over this whole issue. And that's about 25 million rand that we've already paid in his legal bills. Now, Zuma is expected to finally go on trial for those many charges related to the arms deal on 17th May. That's just next month, so expect more Zuma drama. Then there's his more recent case with the Constitutional Court following his ghosting of the Zondo inquiry into state capture. We told you all about that and the drama about not showing up and how that's been taken to the Con Court. Well, this week, Chief Justice Mogoeng asked Zuma what sanction he should face. It was a weird move. Analysts were surprised, saying an ordinary citizen wouldn't be afforded this right before a verdict. Nevertheless, Zuma inevitably used the opportunity for some more legal theatre. He wrote a, wait for it, 21-page letter refusing, again, to partake in the legal process or to answer Mogoeng's questions, dwelling instead on his usual I am a victim narrative for 21 pages, guys. Wow. This is a really cute international story we thought you guys would like. We love the story of Bhutan's vaccine rollout. The Himalayan Buddhist kingdom is nestled between India and China and has managed to vaccinate 93% of its admittedly small adult population, but in just 16 days. This was after being gifted about 150,000 doses by India. But it decided to wait till it had enough for a quick and powerful vaccination strategy and to avoid rationing. But the way Bhutan got its religious population on board by turning the campaign into a lively national event is most interesting. The Prime Minister of Bhutan is a doctor and the Health Minister has a degree in epidemiology, but they didn't just bash their population over the head with science. They consulted a body of Buddhist monks called the Zung Drashtang, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, to advise on the most auspicious way to start the inoculations, down to the birth sign of the first recipient. The first shot was administered while prayers were chanted and butter lamps lit, The Economist reported. Then an orange-clad National Service Corps called the Guardians of Peace helped enact the quick and widespread vaccination strategy at over 1,200 stations across the country. The result, one of the world's most effective COVID vaccine rollouts. Pretty inspiring stuff. Finally, onto our butchery section. It's been a sad few days for the world as some key figures, both locally and abroad, passed away. Locally, we mourn Dr. Sindisiwe van Zyl, famously known as Dr. Cindy. She was a humanitarian, medical doctor, health activist, and radio DJ. She was known for her kindness and humility, and she died aged 45 on the 10th of April, 2 months after she was diagnosed with COVID-19. When South Africa learned of her diagnosis and the mounting medical costs, they contributed to a crowdfunding drive organized by her family and friends that raised over 1 million rand. Upon her death, thousands of tributes started pouring in. Perhaps the sweetest of them all were those who, in honor of the woman known for her bold prints and dresses with pockets, posted pictures of themselves celebrating that style. Dr. van Zyl's memorial service was held today. Then there was the death of anti-apartheid activist and education expert Graham Bloch. Bloch was suffering from an illness and passed away at the age of 65. During the struggle, he was detained and arrested several times for his involvement in the democratic movement. He's being lauded for his contributions to South Africa's intellectual and organizational leadership. The untimely death of Anele, otherwise known as Nelly Tembe, the 22-year-old fiancée of rapper AKA, was also a shock for South Africa. Tembe fell to her death on Sunday from the penthouse of the Pepper Club Hotel in Cape Town. Like many others, we were also shaken after the suicide of a 15-year-old Limpopo pupil made headlines. Lufuno Mavunga took her own life after a video of her being bullied by fellow pupils circulated on social media. Justice for Lufuno has been trending, and one perpetrator has been arrested. Internationally, we remember American rapper, songwriter, and actor DMX, who died in the past week after a heart attack. And in another instance of police brutality and racism in the US, 20-year-old Dante Wright was shot dead by police after he was stopped in the US, allegedly because of air fresheners that hung from his rearview mirror. He was on the phone with his mother moments before his death, nervously saying he had been stopped by the police. Wright was killed in Minneapolis, the same place where George Floyd was killed by police last year. The ongoing assault of police in certain parts of America on black people is just so distressing. Finally, condolences to the English monarchy and the passing of 99-year-old Prince Philip. He was the consort and untiring supporter to Queen Elizabeth in her long reign. Now, he was the kind of king in many ways of gaffes and made some seriously problematic racist statements, but he was also a huge support to a powerful woman long before it was fashionable to do so. That's it from us at The Wrap, a product of Explained Curza. Simple news summaries for busy people. Remember to share the love, tell your friends to sign up for the updates at explained.curza/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from the team.